Mr. Hari, can we start?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening to all of you, principals, faculty members, and students from academic institution. A very good evening to all. On behalf of the Learners Confluence, I have great pleasure in welcoming you all to this third edition of the Corporate Leaders Speak series. We thank all the participants for the continuous support in this initiative to connect the students to the corporate leaders and learn from them as they move forward in their career. It's a privilege and honor for me to welcome in our midst and extend our warm greetings to our guest speaker this evening, Mr. Hari K. Tyagarajan, Executive Director, Tyagarajan Mills Private Limited, and also the immediate past chairman of the Confederation of Indian Industry, Tamil Nadu. In addition to his industry position, he is also the secretary of the prestigious and renowned education institution, Tyagarajar College, Madurai. Thank you, Mr. Hari Tyagarajan, for accepting our invitation to interact with students. We are honored to have you in our midst this evening. We also welcome Professor Thiruvengadam, who will also be sharing some of his thoughts with the students after Mr. Tyagarajan speaks. The Corporate Leader Speak series is one of the important initiatives of the Learners Confluence for students of higher education institutions across the country. Through this program, we intend to create and raise awareness to students on the expectations by the world of work and to create a platform for higher education institutions to interact with corporate leaders on a regular basis. As I mentioned earlier, this session will be conducted every month, featuring a leader every month. In conclusion, we strongly believe these sessions would forge a strong and productive relationship between the academia and industry and provide students an opportunity to gain crucial insights into industry trends and operational challenges by learning from the industry pioneers themselves. With these words, I once again thank you all for joining us this evening. We are overwhelmed by your response. We look forward to your active participation. Without further ado, may I now invite Mr. Hari Tyagarajan to deliver his keynote address. Mr. Tyagarajan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Ganesan, for introducing me. I'm just doing a mic check and hope the audio is quite clear.
Yeah, it's clear, absolutely clear. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would, first of all, like to thank and appreciate the efforts of the Learners Confluence here. I think TLC is doing a wonderful job, even during these pandemic times, in having industry leaders speak to young entrepreneurs and young students, who have come in, I think, large numbers. I see about 100 participants on my screen. I think more are watching this program on Facebook. So thank you for this opportunity. I would like to, start off with how the last 1 year, the whole world has been embraced with so much of, challenges and opportunities. I think we always need to have a positive, bent of mind and try to make use of the situation in the best possible way. I think technology today has aided transfer and dissemination of data and knowledge across continents without any, sort of barriers in terms of sharing this knowledge. People are, living miles apart, but we are able to connect thanks to technology. I'm not sure how many of us even used the Zoom platform which we are interacting today. How many of us were using it for our internal meetings and for meetings with our customers, etc. I think very few of us. Most of us were using, I think, Skype or face-to-face meetings, traveling, overseas, traveling within the nation to meet our, customers and counterparts was the done thing. But now, I think, thanks to COVID, we have learned to save a lot of time, energy, and resources in traveling, and we are able to connect, very easily across the board. So, friends, I would like to start off by saying that change is something which can never be challenged. We can never challenge, change, because change is something that is constant. It is happening right now. It has happened and it will happen. I think the past, present, and future have always seen change in various quarters, various sectors, different ways in which we, deal with things and so on. So change is something that, one of the attributes that this pandemic has taught us. It has taught us to become more agile. When I talk about agile, I'd like to mention here that what is agility? I think we need to, have agile bodies. We all go to the, gym, or we play a sport to keep ourselves agile. So businesses also have to be agile. Businesses also need to cut, unwanted flesh. Businesses also have to be lean. And today there is an area in technology where people are building programs, are building softwares to ensure that optimal usage of resources of any particular business, especially the MSMEs. There are people who are specializing in this. They are called agile trainers. So, companies need to make use of their resources, whether it be their raw material, whether it be their human resources, whether it be their capital budget allocation. They need to ensure that they use the right resources at the right time. And the Japanese technology, all you students must have heard of, the just-in-time principle, where we never have, too much, in terms of inventory, in terms of human resource, we never waste on unwanted things. So I think one opportunity which has come out of this, pandemic is that we have all realized from industry that we need to use technology to a greater extent. We need to use technology more wisely. And at the same time, we need to ensure that we have the exact optimal amount of resources so that our, underlining profit margin, which at the end of the day, everybody is in business to make money. So whether we make a lot of money or whether we make less money, it depends on each sector. It depends on how each company or each industry is run. But the underlying principle of business is that, all of us need to make money. So this pandemic has thrown on us some many opportunities as well. I think health has been a major challenge where 1% of the population has been affected with this pandemic very badly. But I think India has always been resilient. In whatever challenges come our way, we have been resilient. And today, friends, I think I'm happy to say that we have been able to successfully produce 2 vaccines, the Covaxin and the Covishield, and we are almost exporting it to about 40 countries, which we would have never expected about 40 or 50 years ago. I think India, when we had the plague outbreak, we were not well equipped. But today, thanks to biotechnology, thanks to the advancements of science and technology, our students who are coming out of engineering institutions or arts and science colleges or management institutes are being absorbed by companies like the Serum Institute, are being absorbed by companies like the Bharat Biotech. And these young engineers are the ones behind the research and development of such vaccines. India was also an exporter of the PPEs, the personal protective equipments, to so many countries during the pandemic. I think we have really learned lots of lessons, and we have really shown that the adaptability of Indian businesses, the resilience of Indian businesses has really been showcased during this pandemic. Friends, I would like to give you an interesting analogy. Look at the past, maybe about 30 or 40 years. I think some of you must be in your 20s or even below 20s, I'm not sure. But if you look back at history, the human race has always been challenged at the end of every decade. So you all know decade is 10 years. So at the end of every decade, there has been a very unique challenge which the whole world, the whole human race has been faced with. Let me start the late 90s and the early 2000s. When the new year of 2000, which is the new millennium, when it was going to come, the month of November or December, I remember when I was maybe, I think 11 or 12 years old, the month of December, when we usually celebrate Christmas and when we buy, a lot of cards to post, to our relatives and friends, there was such a big adore that 2000, we are entering into the new millennium, the next gen, and, things like this. But then about 98, 99, we had the dot-com bubble. That was when the internet came. People started, getting to know what the internet was. And internet, my friends, was not available those days on the phone in the late part of 90s. You had to go to an internet cafe when you were traveling, or you had to go to a business center, inside a hotel, or use the Wi-Fi. Internet on your pocket was not something that was very common those days. Maybe it was there in some countries like the US, I'm not sure. But the late 90s, there was a overheated bubble, and it led to the dot-com crisis. The markets were overheated. Stock markets came tumbling down, and there was a big crash in stock markets in all economies, and IT sector itself underwent a lot of crisis during the end of 90s, and that was when we were starting the year 2000. Now fast forward to the next 10 years, 2010. In 2009, we had the subprime mortgage crisis in the US. Financial markets again melted, and the Lehman Brothers crashed in the US, and this had led to the whole real estate market collapsing, and there were so many challenges at that point in time. But if you see from 1999 till 2009, that was when the Indian economy, though it was a victim to the dot-com bubble, and it was a victim to the American financial market crisis, that 10 or 12 years from 98 to 2010 was when the Indian economy actually opened its doors and windows to attract foreign investors, to attract foreign companies to come and invest in India, like our BMW, Toyota, Nissan, etc. So many automobile companies and IT companies like Microsoft came and landed up here in India. So all this happened during that time when the license Raj was removed, and Indian companies were asked to go and invest. And ease of doing business, of course, was made easier. And this was when the whole, of corporate India started contributing towards the, growth of the GDP and employing so many millions of people. The next 10 years, that is between 2010 and 2020, again, I think we did have challenges. The economy was not doing so well. Just before the COVID crisis, just before the lockdown, the economy was not doing well. There was a slowdown in world markets, and it looked as if a recession is going to set in. But suddenly, came a health scare sometime in the early part of 2020 in January, where they said in Wuhan there was an outbreak of this virus, and people were wearing masks and protecting themselves. Never did we imagine that it was going to come to India and attack us. But on March 24th, when the Prime Minister announced for a complete lockdown, we came to know that this, warfare is not happening because of our enemy countries. It is not happening because of terrorists. It is not happening because of the, financial meltdown of markets, but it is purely happening by a virus which is unseen or unheard of to the human eye and to the human ear. So if you see in the last 30 years, at the end of every decade, there have been challenges, and India has, I think, very well risen out of those challenges. And we have really started, doing new things. When I say new things, new industries or new greenfield industries like defense, aerospace, all this is being given a lot of thrust today. And in terms of healthcare, in terms of education, India is always innovating, as is happening in the case of manufacturing as well. So each decade has brought with itself many challenges, and industry has actually used the cusp when one decade ends and the other decade starts. That has been a very crucial time for the corporate world, and the companies which have survived this particular cusp problematic phase have really sustained due to other headwinds which have come their way as well. I would also like to tell you here that today industry is looking for active participation with academic institutions and with students. So when I say that, I think today we have to prepare future-ready engineers or future-ready doctors or future-ready bankers or future-ready entrepreneurs. So when I say future-ready, what do I mean? Friends, the future does not mean it is 10 years or 12 years. You really cannot put a timeline to it. We live in uncertain times, and the pace in which technology is growing, the pace in which the corporate world is modernizing or changing is just happening at lightning speed. So what I would like to mention here is that the students coming out of our academic institutions, they are very good when it comes to the concepts and theories. But how far are the academic institutions bridging the gap between academia and industry is a question mark. Definitely, our Indian education institutions have started on in the right path. They are trying to see where are all the gaps which are there and trying to fill it. But as students and as teachers, I think all of you have a great responsibility to make sure that whatever we produce out of our institutions, it can be a research paper, it can be a doctoral thesis, it can be a student, it can be a research scholar. But whatever comes out of an academic institution has to be a very, very high standard. And only high quality and high standard stuff will sustain in the long run in today's market. Because thanks to globalization, we are able to get information, we are able to get data at a touch of a screen. So the human resource that we are building from these education institutions also have to cope up with this change. They have to be adaptive, they have to be receptive, and they have to continuously learn. I think you need to be a student all your life. Your life as a student does not end in a school or a college or a university. It is just the beginning. You need to, I think, as you have a role as a husband for your lifetime, you have a role as a child for a lifetime, your father to somebody for your lifetime. The same way, I think you also need to be a student for a lifetime. Unfortunately, many of us, miss the bus because we do not learn, relearn and unlearn the, concepts. When I say concepts, do you think it is, only about Newton's, 3 laws of motion, or the principles of thermodynamics, or about the fluid dynamics? It is not, these concepts which we memorize in school, which we will be applying in the later part, during the college and during the higher education phase. It is just not learning these theories, verbatim, but we need to understand that these principles have an underlying effect in our day-to-day life. It may be in our house, it may be in our workplace, but whatever we do, I think these principles, we need to, keep analyzing it and keep reminding ourselves that this is just not bookish knowledge. We do not want to create bookworms, but we want to, create, practical people who can think for themselves and who can make a difference. And only these kind of, output which comes out of the colleges will truly be what the industry needs. Today, there is a concept of Industry 4.0. When I said future-ready engineers or future-ready doctors, we have today Industry 4.0. What is Industry 4.0? The first revolution of industrial growth happened because man developed a cart and he put the horse in front of it, and we had the horse-driven carts. So that was mobility. People were able to go from place A to place B on a horse cart. Then next came the steam engines, the locomotive engines which used coal to generate power and move from one location to another location in a faster speed. So that was when trains were invented. And then the third industrial revolution, we had the Wright brothers who came and invented, and who invented the flying machine, which is the aeroplane. And we also had Henry Ford, who created great brands like Ford, etc. So the automobile revolution was the third industrial revolution, and that created very big landscape for growth for countries like Germany, which really caught on to that wave, and US as well. The fourth industrial revolution, which we are part of now, is something that is very unique. It is not talking about the essential diesel engines or the internal combustion engines. Today, we are talking about electric cars, my dear friends. We are talking about hybrid cars. We are talking about cars which can operate on a hybrid mode with both the battery and fuel. We are talking about EVs. We are talking about charging stations. And we have now the Bharat 6, which the government has announced. where we need to change, some of our vehicles within a certain period of time. And the government says beyond 10 years or beyond 15 years, you will have to trash your car because they do not want to have, higher pollution in the environment. So today the world is moving towards electric vehicles. We have the autonomous cars in the US, but I do not know when it's going to come to India. But I'm sure Industry 4.0 is a very, very unique pace in industrial growth and industrial development. And you young students have the opportunity. I think you're really blessed to be graduating sometime soon in the next 5 years, 6 years, or 10 years, where you will be reaping the benefits of Industry 4.0. Why do I say that? Because you will be working with your colleagues. You will be working with your subordinates. You will be working with your peer team. But at the same time, you will also be working along with machines, along with robots, what we call today as cobots. So there will be a higher degree of interaction between human beings and machines. Very, very higher degree of interaction between human beings and machines. So today we have artificial intelligence, where if you call a particular salon to book an appointment, there will no longer be a receptionist. It will be done by a machine. You will get an automated call from your credit card issuing bank saying that your dues are to be paid by 31st of March. All these at one point of time was being called as call centers. India was one of the largest countries employing back office staff for call center purpose. But today call centers are getting automated. This is what I mean as the opportunities, as how the machine, how the robots, how automation is really picking up. And students will have to definitely understand that unless you are able to keep pace with a robot, you will not be able to succeed. I'd also like to mention here that there is a difference between two concepts. One is advanced technology. All this that I mentioned, big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all these are advanced technologies, or quantum computing. All these are advanced technologies. We have courses, we have companies who have, who are startups, who are, pioneering in these fields. And students will also have to take, these courses as electives if it's offered in your, college. We offer such courses in our institutions. But if these courses are not offered in your college, I think you can go and pitch in and tell your teachers that these are the courses which are value adds, and this is what industry is looking from us. And when I talk about these areas, it is not that machine learning or artificial AI is being used only in the IT and IT enabled service sector. It is being used today in education. It is being used today to impart low-cost, high-quality healthcare. It is being used today in manufacturing. Friends, how many of you have heard about 3D printing? 3D printing is a very hot topic today, where you can print a particular product, where you can make a prototype of a particular product in a few hours, which required, I think, a few days, a few years ago. And today I read in the newspaper, I think a few days back, that a small house has been constructed by the IIT by only using 3D printed, panels. There is no, RCC or anything inside that. It is just built by using 3D printed, blocks and panels. So this is where technology is going today. So I think education institutions have to offer these courses. Like what I mentioned was only on the technology front, but there are so many new things. When I talk about management, or when I talk about commerce, today students have to take up additional courses in a course like BCom. So say if you have an opportunity to do a chartered accountancy course along with BCom, please do it. Which means you will spend half a day in the college and half a day doing articleship in the auditor's firm. But you will be learning and you will be applying at the same time. This is exactly what industry today wants from students. We want you to learn concepts and we want you to apply it at the same time. This is why we say in medicine, in engineering, or in polytechnics, students have to work in the industry while they're doing their course. So at the end of the third year or end of the second year, if not, I think end of every academic year during the summer holidays, please try to get internships and go and work in companies. Because this is where you will understand that there is a big gap between what the academic institution gives and what the industry wants. So we really need to bridge this gap. And that can only be done by proactive students. You need to go out. There are so many resources online, which during the presentation, Professor Thiruvengadam will be showing. There are so many resources online which can be used for your skilling. When I say skilling, skilling again is not constant. It keeps on changing. You cannot say that I am, a skilled programmer. I know how to use C++ or Java. You need to keep on moving. You need to keep on learning, keep on skilling yourself. Do not, just stick to one skill. You have to, reskill and you have to upskill. Unless you do this, you will be redundant. So my advice is, try to take up internships as much as possible. It is very easy to apply online. There are many resources, there are many websites, many portals which can connect you to the right job that you need. Please go and work not in the same domain which you are studying. If you are doing mechanical engineering, try to do 4 or 5 internships in automobile companies or core companies. Always do not aspire to take a job in IT. That is the problem today. India, I think is creating today IT coolies, I should say. I'm sorry to be using this word, but it is just mundane programming. I know so many of my friends who say that they have, they are on the desk, which means that they can just sit at home and almost do nothing. You will get saturated or you will have a burnout very soon in life if you do not apply yourself in trying to solve the problems of society, in trying to solve problems of industries. IT can become, very, very mundane. So my advice is take up internships, go and do projects, and this is exactly what will, land up on a, dream job of yours. It will give you more opportunities to, study abroad. The, universities abroad look at this, as a very big gateway. And even if you want to have entrepreneurial skills, I think all this will help. So Industry 4.0, my dear friends, has many opportunities. I have just told you 3 or 4, areas like telemedicine, online education, which I think TLC is doing today very well. All these are going to be game changers. There is going to be a shift after this pandemic of students, how they learn, how teachers teach and how students learn. We are going to use ICT a lot more. And, one more advice to you is try to read as much as possible other than your academics. You need to be well informed today. And this is something which is lacking in today's students. We have the new education policy, which the government has, unwrapped, which has some very exciting opportunities coming our way. I'm told that maths and physics are not really required for an engineering degree by the AICTE. Well, I don't know how this is going to pan out. I do not have an opinion on this, but the new education policy gives you a lot of freedom, gives a lot of academic freedom. Even if you're a dropout, it is not called as a dropout hereafter. You will, get a degree, or you will get a diploma, or you will get a certificate. You will get something, after you finish the first year or second year of college and drop out. So this is what the American system has always believed in. The American system has been very diverse, where students have been exposed, to a lot of things other than their, main subject core area. They have been exposed to so many new fields. So what I would like to say here is, as Friedman said, the world today is flat. It is not round. It is flat. Because we are able to interact with the world much better than what we were able to do so a few hundred years back. We have really come a long way. And today is, where you have a lot of opportunity to work, to actually work alongside with machines. So I actually spoke about advanced technology. I would now like to speak on appropriate technology and just tell you the difference between the two. Appropriate technology is what, in my opinion, India needs the most. Advanced technologies, we have programs, we have softwares, we have people who can help us. We have things like cloud computing or ERP systems, which most industries are using today. And I can, on my phone with an app, I can get all my production data shift wise, hour wise. What my machine in my industry, in my spinning industry, what is the productivity I'm able to get per hour, I'm able to see today on my phone. Everything is integrated. We are using the cloud to a very large extent. We have internal servers which are able to store data of so many gigabytes, etc. So advanced technology is today available at fraction of the cost. But what about appropriate technology? Appropriate technology is what India really needs. These appropriate technologies are using sensors. Like for example, you buy a BMW car, there is so much of automation inside that car. Or for example, if you're riding a bike, today, certain companies in India, the two-wheeler companies, are able to have sensor recognized or motion recognized keys. So when you walk near the bike itself, the bike unlocks. So sensors is going to be a game changer. We are using sensors in so many areas, and we have the QR code where we scan and we get the entire history of that particular product. Today in industry, we are talking something about traceability. So in my textile sector, today if I'm wearing a shirt, say this blue color shirt that I'm wearing today, I want to know where the cotton for the shirt has come from, where the yarn for the shirt was manufactured, where the fabric for the shirt was manufactured, where was the shirt processed and dyed into this blue color, which country or which market put all this together and stitched my shirt. And finally, I go to a particular shop, here in Madurai and buy this shirt. So if I just put a scanner on the QR code, I'll be able to get this entire traceability to see from start to stop. I'll be able to completely trace where all the shirt has gone and come to Madurai, and it is now being worn by me. So today in textiles, there is a huge demand for organic products. They want to make sure that the products are not being manufactured using child labor. The buyer is so sensitive that they don't want to buy wearables like shirts and jeans which have chemicals beyond a certain point. They want organic usage of chemicals. Now all this, with this QR code, the entire horoscope chart of this particular product is very easily got using traceability. So for all this, we are going to be using appropriate technology. India today has a lot of human resource. A lot of people are unemployed. With the right education, even then, some of the students are not getting their jobs which they require. Why? Because they are not having the right set of skills. Even if they go, get a job, they are not able to sustain because they are not able to upskill and move across the value chain or move across their professional lives. So my dear friends, I think appropriate technology is something what India is investing today. Indian corporates are thinking about in a big manner. So appropriate technology is where India is going to have the next level of growth. Today, if some industry has to invest in a particular technology, they will always see what is the return on this investment. How many years will it take me to get back the money that I invested on this machine or on this automation software? Because you're going to be saving human resource, you're going to be cutting down on your overhead costs, your logistics costs, etc. So each investment which a company makes, they will always be looking on the return on investment or the return on capital employed. The same way, there are certain technologies which are completely unaffordable. Say for example, you want to take a particular product which is stacked on several feet high. Say for example, a warehouse or a godown. Automation is very easily possible, but the cost goes into crores of rupees. That is why the medium MSME sector in India is apprehensive to invest so much of money in these high funda technologies. So what do we require? We require low cost solutions. We require human beings to be trained in a particular way and to be more efficient. Like how we have an efficiency scorecard for everything in this world today. We also need to have an efficiency scorecard for ourselves. The 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours that you work, you need to see how efficient you are. as students, I don't think you require, to be taught about hard work, because hard work is something that Indians do much better than some of our other counterparts in the, Europe or US. I'm not saying Southeast Asia. I have seen certain companies in Japan which work from 6 a.m. till about 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. They start at 6 a.m. in the morning, and they only cook in their house on Saturdays and Sundays. They just live on brought out food, but that is not healthy. That is not a healthy way of living. But then we should really challenge ourselves with smart work. I think smart work is something that we need to focus on to make ourselves more efficient and to really build on appropriate technology rather than advanced technology. So today's talk by Professor Thiruvengadam, he'll be speaking for about 10-15 minutes, 15 minutes I think. He will be sharing some of his ideas on how academic curriculum needs to be built to be more engaging with the students, so that this gap between industry and academia is bridged. And he will be talking about three main areas. One is about knowledge, which all of you have plenty. Another one is about skills, which I think you are in the process of acquiring. And the last one is attitude. So look at this as three circles having commonalities, A, B, and C. One is knowledge, one is skills, and the other one is attitude. When you have the right mixture of all these three things put together, I think you will make a wonderful engineer or a wonderful doctor or an excellent entrepreneur who will be very successful in life. So he will be sharing that in his presentation. Can we have the presentation, please, Mr. Thiruvengadam?
Sir, I'm sharing it.
Before I pass on the floor to him, I would just like to show you one slide, which I want to, Friends, this is a real life story which happened in Honduras in the US. There is a place in America where this bridge that you see is built. It is called Choluteca. Choluteca Bridge. There is a lot written about this bridge on the web pages. So please Google it to try to know more about it. I will tell you what it is. The river that you see, this Choluteca Bridge, was built by the Americans using very high-class engineers, very advanced building technologies of civil engineering, etc., very good products, and it was built to last a lifetime. And water was flowing, under that bridge, beneath that bridge. People were, traveling across that bridge. There was a road on either side of the bridge. There were a lot of vehicles moving every single day. And one day, there was a huge flood that came. And because of this flood, the river itself changed its course. The river which was flowing beneath the bridge now is flowing besides the bridge. The river changed its course because of the flood and the hurricane. You all know that hurricanes in US can be really devastating. And this was one such hurricane. So now the river changed its course and it's flowing besides the bridge. So what is the use of the bridge? It is of no use to anybody. The concept of built to last has been proven wrong by this bridge in Choluteca. It is built to adapt. Whatever you do, my dear friends, you need to make sure that you are able to adapt yourselves to new technologies, to new environments, and to new challenges. We really cannot build things which can last forever anymore, because change is something that is happening in front of our own eyes. So any problem that you see, I think you need to see it wearing a different glass or having a different vision. The problem itself is going to change. We are always searching for solutions. You have a problem in your company, you're searching for a solution. You have a problem at home, you're searching for a solution on how to repair it. You have a problem with your health, you're going to your doctor to see how you can improve it. But now we need to start, telling ourselves that the problem itself is not going to last forever. The problem itself is going to change. When you go into the hospital to get treated for a particular disease, they find out that you have some other disease. So that is diagnosed at that point in time. The same is true in our personal lives, and the same is true in the corporate life as well. The problem itself will change is going to change in some small or very large fraction. So you really need to build solutions according to that, and cannot always think that the problem statement will ever remain constant. With these thoughts, I would like to pass on the floor to Professor Thiruvengadam to do his brief presentation, after which I would like to have an interaction. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dear friends, so far,
Professor, your voice is very feeble.
The talks from industrial person. Now this is.
Professor Thiruvengadam, your volume is very feeble. Can you increase your volume, please?
Is it fine, sir, now?
Yeah, slightly better, but I think you can still improve it.
Yes, sir. 1 second, sir. Is it better, sir, now?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing the session with me. This is the thought process from the academic perspective. This is also the future-ready graduates from higher education institution. Sir has mentioned about the 3 aspects: knowledge, skill, and attitude. This is what we are following. We would like to follow in the academic process in higher education institutions. The knowledge and attitude combinedly, it serves a purpose. Knowledge and skill, it gives the process. Then skill and attitude gives the commitment. Combinedly, we say it is the ability. So from the academic perspective and from the industrial requirement side, the educationalists, they say the purpose of higher education is to build knowledge, skill, and attitude at the institution itself, to enable the graduates to equip with necessary skills, competencies, experience, and training required for independent practice in professional role. This is not the new one. It is already declared in many forums at the international level, especially in the way we are offering the engineering programs here. It is already defined as the program outcomes by the International Engineering Alliance. They are given the very clear detail on what knowledge, skill, and attitude should students possess as they graduate from higher education institutions. So if I am going to look at it in a detailed manner, I'm not going into the details of these things. There are 12 graduate attributes for engineering programs. They are given equal importance for all the 3: knowledge, problem, and attitude. The knowledge also they are given at the various levels. Just applying the knowledge, or you are going to analyze the problem, or you are trying to give the many solutions and trying to get the best solution possible. And if it is not available, go and do investigations on the problem and try to get a new solution there. That implies, so we should not stop at one particular point. You go and search and get the solution for the complex problems in alignment with the skill orientation. You may get to do some experiment with the use of modern tool usage. No engineers can work individually, or maybe no graduates can work individually. How to work in a team, how to communicate among ourselves and with the other society people or enterprise people, then how we are going to manage that entire thing in a beautiful way that we are talking about as a problem skill. Whatever may be the thing they are going to discuss, they get to discuss about with the purpose of what is the effect on the society, environment, and the sustainability. All these things we get to do with ethical and keep planning. Sari has also mentioned that it is we get to be a student for lifetime. That is going to be the essential thing, one of the things mentioned for the as a graduate attributes now. So these things, they are given equal priority now. So now I'm going to discuss about the current scenario wise. The most of the educational programs in higher education institutions were conceived and constructed in 70s or 80s. I'm not complaining anything. This is the observation here. The much more emphasis is on the theoretical part, and some institutions are maybe the conservative in this nature all over the world, not only in India here. And because of this, quite a number of programs show a dangerous sense of complacency that automatically, sorry, has shown one thing there. There's a bridge and the river is taken the other direction now. This is something like what we are thinking is a correct one, but the things are moving away from that particular thing. This is a mismatch between the job market needs and the narrow focus of the technical change, as well as the students are, industries are hiring employees who have the skills required to get jobs done with or without a degree. So these are all the scenario changes, maybe looking like as a something as a disadvantage side, but India has the advantage, as are mentioned, that we have the demographic advantage of more than 50% of our population below the age of 25. So definitely there is a possibility of the huge opportunity is possible for upskilling, as well as the Indian parents, teachers, children, as well as institutions are changing their approach to digital learning. It has been clearly observed by in the industry called as a Colon IQ. They given a learning landscape for the graduates in 10 different aspects, where the content are available, knowledge content are available, and how we are going to educate the management, what are the new models available for learning, what is experiential learning, what are the platforms available, what are the international education, what are the requirements, learning support, assessment and verification, how we are going to do the workforce and the talent, and what are the skills and the jobs. So these things have been studied exclusively for Indian scenario also by Colon IQ. This is what we are making it here, just to make it things. They can give in very clear detail on this particular thing now. It is like looking like as a dictionary as well as a periodic table in the chemistry also there. Each one they give given very good details on that. Suppose I want to learn MOOC courses. What are the possible things in MOOC courses? What I get to do? Suppose I'm aiming for a higher education. What are the things I get to get equipped? I'm looking for a competitive examination. How do I prepare? What are the things available? So I leave this particular platform to the students to explore it further. So it is not, it may be a time consuming process to explain each and everything. So look at these things carefully. There are a lot of open source platforms are available. Wherever this is B2B, this is business to business. Look at our institution and get connect with the corresponding persons so that you can get the information in a very easy form. Otherwise, some of them, it is going to be the business to the customer side, because this is automatically coming directly to you. You can make use of that particular thing in a very clear way. Look at this particular thing, the enormous things are possible for the faculty members to develop, as well as for the students to go ahead further and further, for the educational leaders also. So I feel that this is a wonderful tool. It can be used to by any persons. Okay. Then in the, like this, in Indian higher education side, there are a lot of pre-availability of large, high quality online sources are available. It is not only for the upskilling and the reskilling, it is available for the formal courses and as well as for the new knowledge dissemination. And slowly the colleges are ready to develop the high quality online education. Thanks to the COVID-19 situation, many faculty members have learned how to create these online courses in an effective way. So that's going to be the major advantage in this particular scenario. Then Sir mentioned about the national education policy. As Sir mentioned that there are more focus on the online education as well as open distance learning. And it also supports the flexible curriculum with multiple entries and multiple exits. Some of them may be the 2 years down the line, they are going to leave the program. They'll be given the diploma, 3 years with the degree, maybe with the 4 or 5 years with the postgraduate degree. There are a lot of options are available there. So one can make use of this particular thing in an effective way. So this is what in the Indian higher education side. So what is our aim now? How we are going to utilize or how we are going to improve the ability means it is a knowledge, skill, and attitude. Suppose you want to select the particular institution for your graduate studies, look at that, what are the curriculum they are having, how do they deliver the content, and how they are making the assessment now. Look at these things carefully for the student point of view and faculty point of view, how we are going to set the curriculum and the content delivery and assessment in an effective way in order to meet the industrial requirements there. This is what we are meaning it here. So there are two mindsets are going to be there. One, we call this as a FAR mindset. This is what answering the why question. This is what we are trying to do now. Why we get to make some changes in your mindset. And the second thing is, how do we do that? Both the things are addressed in this presentation. This way, the industry people is here as well as academic people also jointly we are addressing this particular thing. Definitely, it is going to be both the answers you will get in this presentation. I hope that. Sir mentioned about how we can think about it slightly in a different way. If I'm an ECE student, electronics and communication engineering student, I studied a lot of courses like the electromagnetics, transmission lines and the wavegates, antenna, wireless communication. That is not sufficient. That is what the industry is looking for that. You have the knowledge, that is fine. But how we are going to utilize, it for the skill, design and fabrication of antenna for the given application. How do you test that particular thing? This is going to be the skill. The attitude is how we are going to design, we design the antenna. Are you considering the environmental factor, like the specific absorption rate, the electromagnetic pollution? Is it within the acceptable range for the human, animals, and the bat safety? This is going to be the interesting. This is all the things to be combined. Then it is going to be the very interesting scenario. Suppose you are, say, IT person. The things like they are studying a lot of courses on the data structure, data analytics, data mining, cloud computing, human-computer interaction. You have the skill how to utilize the modern tools for and the programming side. But the attitude here it is, I would like to use all this knowledge for the societal uplift. Okay. Suppose our students are doing work on the rehabilitation of the children with autism. Okay. This is going to be the purpose. This is an attitude. It matters now. So the select the problem so that it will be used by the stakeholders or the society or the enterprise in an effective way. It's going to be the fundamental idea. The mechanical engineering, they have a lot of courses with respect to the vehicle design point of view, machining process, kinematics, and the dynamics of machinery, vehicle dynamics, vehicle mechanics. There's a lot amount of the skill courses are also available there. Okay, but the thing is now, again, it is going to be the environment and the sustainability. Whether this, whatever the vehicle you are going to design, is it with the allowable, the carbon footprint for the green environment? Look at those things carefully. This is also going to be the combined way of looking at what we are trying to do now. Even for the literature side, you have the knowledge on the ancient and modern literature. You get a very good horizon skill for the whatever you can learn, give it to the many people there. And you're trying, you get the skill of story writing, screenplay, or poem writing, and all these things. But all these things should be given with the societal responsibility, means that's going to be the attitude there. So what we are trying, I'm trying to say here, in the institution itself, okay, it is not a curriculum just talk about a knowledge. So the curriculum should address all the three, knowledge, skill, and attitude. Where exactly these kind of the things are happening, the student, you can get the major advantage on that particular thing. Normally, this is also offered as a co-curricular and extracurricular activities. Slowly, it is becoming as a single entity now. Okay. The one such things we search for that one is the concept called as the CDIO. Okay, this is called as a conceive, design, implement, and operate. Okay. So this is promoted by a MIT professor in aerospace engineering, Professor Edward Bradley. He has promoted this particular one because he observed that many of the courses in the colleges are going to be in only addresses the knowledge. They are missing completely the personal and interpersonal skills. So how we are going to do that particular thing? He proposed a framework called the CDIO framework. Okay. This is fundamentally talking about in the institution itself, the student should be able to get the customer needs. Okay. Then using that statement, the real-time problem or the whatever the real statement they get given by the customer, they should be able to develop the concept, a technique, or business plan. Okay. So then that should be converted into a design, plan, drawing, and algorithms, depending on which area you are working, whether it is going to be in terms of the science or the engineering or the commerce, whatever it may be there. The need is there. How we are going to convert it into your domain problem, try to address a particular thing, implement it. It is not just implementation alone. Convert this into a product, a process, and a system. Okay. Then do the validation also, whether do the validation with the customer itself, the stakeholder themselves. Okay. Then give the product or the process to the intended user. They should use our design or the product or process or system. Then you say that how long the system is going to be valid also. That means the cycle starts from the customer need. We are understanding the customer problem. We are designing with our domain knowledge. We implement it and we are making the product, process, or system that will be used by the stakeholders. Then they should use it and they should give the feedback that how long it can be maintained and when you get to give the update like that. The cycle starts from the customer end and end at the customer end. In between, we are playing the major role. Maybe the focus may be higher on the design and implement in the colleges, but the focus should be given on the conceive and the operate the part also here. So what we observed in TCE, This is a slight case study here. We are able to attract the meritorious student in the state, and we don't collect any capitation fee. We give the motto as the quality education at affordable cost. That automatically attracts the many students, the many economically poor students to our institution. The obvious thing is that they are giving the job first attitude. So it has a problems. Like Sir mentioned about that mechanical engineering, look for the IT job. Maybe they are looking at the first job because they are coming from the background is the very poor background. They're looking for the job first attitude, whatever it may be the job. The challenge what we are having here, it is the place, how to place them in the core industries and how to motivate them for higher studies in core engineering and how to give them the entrepreneurial attitude. That means how we are going to meet all 12 graduate attributes of International Engineering Alliance. So we thought that the need of the hour is we get to address all the three: knowledge, skill, and attitude, and we get to bring the real world context in the college. That implies students should be given the chance to meet the stakeholders, get the problem from the stakeholder, and give the solution, the technological solution, or develop the solution in the campus and give it back to the customer, see that whether they are using it or not. That's going to be the fundamental thing. So we applied this particular thing, the concept called as a CDIO, conceive, design, implement, and operate framework at our institution in the year 2018. Slowly it is going on. It is picking up. The students are enjoying a lot now. So the idea here it is, they don't make any compromise on the technical knowledge, that is learning to know. At the same time, the students are given enough chances for the personal, professional, and interpersonal skills. That is going to be the learning to be, and the teamwork, the communications, they are talking about as a learning to live together. And the last one is very important because this is where the combinations comes into a picture: conceiving, designing, implementing, and operating systems in the societal and the enterprise context. That's going to be the learning to do. How we are going to make the combinations now. The real challenge is from how we are going to meet the regulatory authorities in making these things there. How we are going to accommodate the student interest. Somebody is coming with a passion to the institution. I want to become a system engineer. How we are going to sustain the students' interest from the beginning to the end. It's going to be the major challenge that we are addressing, that can be addressed through this framework, CDIO. You can also go through that. The website is simply the www.cdio.org. You can explore it further and further. What are the benefits you can get from this particular one? The students themselves, they can make use of that particular thing, how to approach each and every concept course in a different way. That also, it is given very nicely in this website now. The generic skills they are addressing now from the student point of view, you should be in a complex problem solving, personal skills and attitude, professional skills and attitude, teamwork, communication, and whatever the things you are doing, what is the connection with the external and the societal problem, identities there. That's going to be the emphasis they given in the CDIO framework now. So what we thought in the different way, we get to look at it now. Okay. So the idea here it is, if suppose we adapted this framework, one instance, we cannot make changes in all the courses to adapt the CDIO framework. What we thought that, why don't we offer some opportunity for the students, some new courses like the design thinking. So the expectations we given to them are, they get to identify a societal problem. So it was a major challenge for every student. They get to go and meet means it is not a good sign. So what we have utilized in our institution is, we have the unit called as a NSS. We can make them as a technology-based social work. They have a lot of connections with the villages in and around our institution. They go and they are helping the students to meet the stakeholders in a different way. They identify the problem, formulate it as a mathematical problem, and they are going to develop the specification and interaction with the stakeholders. They will go for the multiple solution, select the best solution in discussion with the stakeholders. Then that will be given for the prototyping. Then prototype is valid, they will go for the actual manufacturing thing now. So this concept, it worked very well at the second year level. There were 880 students. We got somewhere around 164 conceptual prototypes we got there. So then we also analyzed that. It is a new one, whether it will be useful for the students or not. what are the impact of this particular one in the 21st century students? They are looking for 4 C's: creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. Whether and self-planning, okay, the analysis also, then feedback also they get given to them. As an outcome, the students' participation in contest, enrollment in self-planning courses, it has been increased, and they also participated in many leadership and soft skill. That is a major advantage we have seen. The 20 of our students, they have been part of the leadership and the soft skill course. They joined in the forum called as Engineers Without Borders. Subsequently, they inaugurated a chapter in our institution now. Okay, this is by students themselves. They made a lot of effort and continued with. They are continuing with this project now. Then attitudinal change in approaching all the courses, program courses. Earlier, they will ask a simple question that why do you have so many mathematics course in our program? Okay, sir also mentioned that the AICT they made it maths and physics are optional. The students are also asking a similar question. Why do you have 4 courses in the engineering program? Now they understood that what is the need for the maths and physics in engineering programs now. This attitudinal change we have clearly observed but through this particular course. This is our experience now. The future thing, as the academic process point of view, in order to meet the industry requirement, we are also talking about that which academic process would help to sustain the preparation of the future graduates who can solve human-centric complex problems in an ethical manner. So this is also, we need the help from the students to identify, cooperate with whatever the initiatives taken by the institution. Okay, this is what I mentioned in the design thinking course. If it is matching, okay, exact matching is there, definitely we can get the good system at our country. Then institution also, they are thinking about that what type of students to higher education institution want to educate. Okay, that means there may be some changes in the admission process we can expect. And what are the major changes students will face in 2030? That also we get to be the one side, the decade. From academician point of view, we should think about it. What are the changes that will happen in one decade? What is the way we are making our own preparations now? Then what type of institution do we want to be? And what are the major transformations institution will face in this decade? And finally, it is going to be in terms of the enterprise and the societal connectivity. That means as an institution, okay, what are the value additions we are going to give for the society as well as for the enterprises? I leave these questions to the students as well as for the educational leaders and the faculty members, how we are going to take it forward for the next one decade. These are all my thought process. Okay, this is a sudden things for 4 questions came to my mind. I just typed it here. And as a best practices, teacher-centric to the learner-centric, that means it should be the human-centric. Okay, everybody should think in terms of that. The students, I request you to don't stop at the research level, make them into a product and a pattern, and try to make it as a balanced workload for the student point of view there, even for the faculty members. And if in the UG program, make the UG program as an innovation. That means implying that innovation as a culture in the classroom, and to try to make your own area as the innovation ecosystem, bring the ecosystem such that the innovation is done in the classroom itself, as well as in the assignments, as well as in the examination from the faculty point of view, but make the classroom as an innovation room. That's going to be in the student point of view there. Even if those who are in the PG program, maybe they are going to be the deep knowledge side, but still give some space for the innovative ideas there. Okay. The improving the teaching and learning process in higher education institution, it doesn't mean we are not saying that the teachers and students should work 100 hours more. I think that is not a valid solution. It is about how to get a better student learning within the available student, faculty, time, funding, and other resources. Okay. As sir mentioned that the strategy is read us the space we already have, read us the time we already have. It's going to be the mantra or the strategy. You can keep it in your mind. The students, you can do a lot of things in your future things there. Thank you all. The thing is, the higher education is common for all. Some take pearls, some take fishes, some come out with just wet legs. The world is so common to all. The simple thing is what we get is what we try for. I think we will make use of this particular thing, the mantra, okay, and get benefit out of that. And you can post your questions to SAR now. We will answer this your questions now. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. So I think
what we are going to do is we are going to give rights to everybody to unmute themselves. But my request is please raise your hand, and then we will be able to give you the permission. So just give me 1 minute. Let me unmute all of you.
Sure.
Yeah, you have the rights now to unmute yourself. Please go ahead and ask the question straight.
So I see one question on the chat box. Is it correct to create competent engineering graduates without fundamental knowledge of mathematics and physics in the name of flexibility by AICTE? I think maths and physics are definitely two eyes for any student aspiring to become an engineer. I'm not sure whether there are going to be some bridge courses, but definitely I think high school, maths and physics cannot be replaced. Basic, theories, have to be definitely. I think Mr. Sendil is saying it's withdrawn for now, so that's good. So we don't need to talk about it.
May I ask a question, Dr. Sendil?
Yeah, please go ahead, Dr. Maithili from Jain.
Yeah, so this is Maithili and I'm with Jain University. So I did post this in the chat box also. This is addressed to both Professor Ganeshan as well as Mr. Hari Tyagarajan. So Ganeshan sir, you were talking about how the educational institutions have to leverage themselves, how they have to leverage the academic program and so on. My worry is how do you look at training the trainer? So, I mean, we are all talking about how the students have to be done, what they have to do. But I think for the teachers themselves also, it is a huge challenge as of today, this kind of a environment which has been created of confusion. We no longer know what we have to do to equip ourselves. Because today something is there and tomorrow it's gone. By the time we enroll for a course and equip ourselves, there's something new coming up. Sir, your advice in this matter would be a great help with both Mr. Hari Tyagarajan and Professor Ganeshan.
Yeah.
I think it's Professor Thiruvengadam you are mentioning. Professor Thiruvengadam will follow after Hari Tyagarajan.
Yeah, I think it's a very valid question, what you put across. The issue is, sometimes teachers also forget that, they are learners or they are students. I think, teachers are nothing but, I think, matured learners. That is how I would, call it. Definitely, I think, teachers have to take a course of action in which they need to, we have a lot of orientation programs. But again, what I see is that teachers are, just academicians. They do orientation programs which are offered by universities, which are offered by higher education institutions. So they go there for 2 weeks or 1 month, they get a certificate and then they come back. But this is helping them in their academic progression. It is helping them in getting, higher bonuses or larger, pay packages or pay scales. But I would definitely say that, teachers have a lot of time in their hands. Sometimes the arts colleges or engineering colleges operate only on shift basis. So half a day they are completely, free. And I think 1/3 of the academic calendar goes off in holidays, in semester breaks, etc. So my advice would be that if teachers can also, get to work in industries, especially, teachers who are into research from the science and engineering faculty, if you can take up, short-term internships You can, take up adjunct faculty positions and teach in other, colleges or universities other than where you're teaching now. This will all, I think, give you a different perspective, a fresher perspective, and to also go abroad and take up some, short-term, courses, short-term courses and how you can better your teaching skills. I think, training the trainers is very important, but we are not doing it enough. What I think we are doing is substantially very, very low. So teachers have to have an agenda themselves, which will not interfere too much in the academic calendar. And I think the institutions also should make it mandatory that if a student is coming, if a teacher is coming for a faculty appraisal, every year some institutions have the practice of, seeing how well the teacher has performed in terms of how many PhDs they have produced or how many research publications they have done, how many international seminars they have, attended, how many national seminars they have, given papers, etc. The impact factor and all that. But I think, especially for science and engineering, you also need to keep, a particular criteria to see how many patents the teacher has given, or to also see how many hours they have worked in an industry, or what sort of consultancy projects they have got. So when Professor Thiruvengadam was talking, he was mainly talking on societal problems, on how, graduates of higher learning today can be solvers of those problems. There are so many problems around us. Plastic menace is a big issue. How we can, get all the plastic together. How can it be recycled and reused in a better way? So there are problems around us. So I think teachers should also be, looking into these things, and institutions must make it mandatory that, teachers have to, have so much of practical knowledge or practical exposure when it comes to the appraisal. Otherwise, we are just, going to talk like this in seminars and nothing is going to happen. So unless it is put into a structure, which I think is very important, we should do. So I think, everybody has to play a role in this. The teachers, themselves have to come forward. Institutions also must push them in the right direction and incentivize them. And I think the corporate sector also should be, welcoming for the teachers to come and, work there, to come and do training programs there, etc. And, even faculties like humanities, psychology today, there are so many issues which, need proper counseling. So I'm not talking about just the, teachers of technical institutes, but, even faculties of psychology, faculty in English literature. Today, I can say, very boldly that unfortunately, many of the candidates which we, recruit, they have a lot of technical skills, but they are not able to present it. They are not able to write a proper letter. They are not able to write a representation without grammatical errors. So as English teachers, I think you need to go and work with corporates in teaching them business English. How do you communicate? Communicate better with your business counterparts, or how do you write very brief mails, or how do you prepare a note? Like, say for an example, a CEO is a very busy man, and they're always looking for somebody who can give them crisp data on a half-an-hour flight or on a 10-minute drive to the meeting. So today there are people who are not able to do this. So faculty of English, faculty of psychology, faculty even of Tamil, Hindi, Marathi, whatever. Today in the national education policy, so much thrust is being given for local languages. So there are opportunities everywhere. I think teachers have to go and look out for opportunities to connect better with corporates and to solve these problems, and not just write research papers or keep producing PhDs after PhDs.
Sir, shall I add one more point here, sir?
Please.
Madam, you asked the right question, how to train the teachers. I think that it is the responsibility of the academic leaders in the institution. They get to get a mechanism in which area you would like to focus. I mentioned about one course on the design thinking. Before we introduce this particular course, we made a plan. We would like to train 30 teachers in our institution. We get a close interaction with the Purdue University Professor William Box. We approached him. he offered the course on design thinking to our faculty members. We got trained first. He gave a lot of ideas what are the things, do's and don'ts when we interact with the society people. He gave a lot of example and exercises also to our faculty members. We got trained, then we offered this particular course. So in my opinion, the educational leaders at the institution, they should get a clear idea on which particular area we would like to progress. We get to ask our faculty members to go to the particular program. So it is not going to be the waste. It will be effectively utilized by the student also. It's going to be the win-win situation, as we get to be the learners all the time. There is no doubt at all in this particular thing now. So it is the responsibility of the academic leaders in the institution to decide on this particular one.
There is one more question which has been asked. So with NSS, you are doing good work, but is it connected to curricular or any internal assessment marks?
We don't have any internal assessment mark for that one, but it is a technology-based social work. We get a lot of courses to encourage to do that particular work there. So it's going to be the indirect way they will be getting benefited now. Not directly, we are not giving any mark directly to the students. They get the indirect benefit, like getting the problem and solving this. They can go and participate in the hackathons, in the contest. They can get the new model. Those kind of the things they will get it. It's indirect benefit, not the direct marks there.
I think I'll just mention one point here. Along with NSS, some of the projects which are conceived by the institution is to work with the rural hamlets around the college. There are many small villages around the college where the students go there, and there are many ladies there. So instead of teaching them some cottage industry based work like making a pickle or making papad, which they already are doing, there was a project in which our faculty members and students went there, and they have taught these ladies soldering of PCBs. The printed circuit boards which we have, they have this very small wires which are connecting so many places there. So soldering is a particular skill which is needed for PCBs. So I think today electronics is using a lot of PCBs, and some of those ladies in the village, I'm happy to say, can actually solder very well those PCB boards. So these are some areas I think how we can use NSS or NCC in not just going and putting a board there and saying we are cleaning today, or we are picking all the plastic trash away, or we are giving a blackboard to the school there. It is not things like this. I think it is creating more livelihood opportunities.
Is there any other question? I just have one question to just sum up the whole session. How much time does it take to do mindset shift when it comes to academics vis-a-vis industry? These are two different, because you had the opportunity to work on both the sides. That's where I wanted specifically this question to be asked to you. Because many a times when we push for such ideas, the first thing is that it is not doable in academics. But whereas in industry, they say there is a target, there are certain things which needs to be kind of done. So what's your take? Because you have experienced both the sides. So what's your take?
No, as I already mentioned, I think in my beginning of the speech, I think, Indian institutions today, whether it be IITs or Indian Institute of Science or so many other, state level or national level universities are really working in this front where, they want to create products, where they want to interface even more closely with the, corporate world. I don't think any opportunity or challenge, if it is an A-grade institution, nobody is going to say that it is not possible or it is not doable. I think those days are gone. And today we have, metrics which are ranking institutions like the National Institution Ranking Framework, or we have the NAC, which is there for the accreditation, purpose, which comes to the institution once in 5 years. So all these metrics are looking for excellence, are looking for areas in which, what are the extension activities you're doing behind, ahead of four walls of the, college, beyond the four walls of the college. So there are metrics, there are scorecards, there are, marks put for all this. So if it is a very good institution which has, aspirations of, becoming a world-class institution, which I'm sure that, down the lane, we will be producing more world-class institutions. I think we are going the right way. We are adapting ourselves. We are adopting some of the best practices which the American universities did, which are still doing, where, they were promoting startups, like for example, Google, Facebook, Intel, all these companies, the womb for these companies was, Stanford and Harvard or other, institutes in the US. So today we have an incubation center in our college. Most of the top colleges in this, country are having incubation centers, and incubation centers are working on, particular areas. It can be a biotech incubator, or it can be a MSME incubator, or a, tech-based incubator, IoT-based incubator. There are so many specified incubators as well. So there are students, who are, taking up entrepreneurship, who are taking up R&D, but I think this needs to proliferate. The numbers are low. We need to have more such numbers. We need to have more incubators, more students getting into this, and that will slowly happen. I think India is, getting a lot of opportunities with this China +1 strategy. I think a lot of opportunities are there, but we cannot, I think, afford to miss this. We already missed it once. We can't afford to miss it again. So we need to have, made in India products. The, government is also giving a thrust for, Skill India, or, Make in India, Atmanirbhar and all this. So many things I can say. Even this Ganesh Chaturthi, Vinayagar or Ganesh dolls, which we are using, the paper mash dolls, are getting imported from China. So why can't we make such products here? That is the question. Why not make in India for India? So I'm sure that, with the right, blend between academics and corporates, more startups can come, more innovation can come. As already mentioned, this, appropriate technology, I think, is the next level for growth in India.
Thank you, Mr. Hari Tyagarajan, for that explicitly saying it, because I think it's a journey which the academic institutions still need to take up, and it will take some time for them to look at. Because with NEP coming in, we are very sure that I think whether the NEP official implementation will happen or not, but I think side by side we are able to see many plans are already started getting implemented in different institutions. So I think there are moments when people need to kind of start the change journey, and I think it will happen naturally. Over to Ganesh.
Thank you. Thank you both, Mr. Hari Tyagarajan and Professor Thiruvengadam, for sharing their thoughts with the students on to be the future ready. We are privileged to have both of you to talk to the students. On behalf of the Learners Conference, I just want to thank both the speakers and also the students and professors, faculty members who are joined today to listen to these two gentlemen. Thank you once again. Our next session of the Corporate Leaders series is scheduled on 22nd of April. We look forward to your participation next month. Thank you very much once again. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Ganesh.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Professor Thiruvengadam.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank
Sir.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.